You know that friend who shows up 20 minutes before the movie starts? The one who's already seated at the restaurant when you walk in fashionably 5 minutes late? The person who arrives at the airport with enough time to watch 3 planes take off before theirs? Yeah, we all know someone like that. Maybe you are that person. And if you're not, you've probably wondered what's going on in the mind of someone who treats every appointment like a life or death mission that requires military level punctuality. Well, let me tell you, there's a lot more happening beneath the surface than just good time management. When you see someone who's chronically early, your first instinct might be to think they're just organized, maybe a bit anxious, or perhaps they were raised by parents who drilled the importance of being on time into their heads. And sure, those things can play a role, but the psychology behind chronic earliness runs deeper than that. It's woven into how these people see the world, how they relate to others, and most fascinatingly, how they cope with uncertainty. Let's start with the obvious: control. Life is unpredictable. Traffic jams appear out of nowhere. Your alarm doesn't go off. Your kid spills juice on your shirt right before you leave. The world is a chaotic place, and for people who arrive early, being ahead of schedule is their way of building a buffer against that chaos. When you're early, you're not at the mercy of chance. You've taken the randomness of life and said, "Not today." There's a deep psychological comfort in that. Research in behavioral psychology shows that people who feel they have control over their environment experience lower levels of stress and anxiety. So when someone arrives early, they're not just showing up, they're taking control of their narrative, ensuring that no surprise can derail them. But here's where it gets interesting. It's not just about control over the external world. It's also about control over how they're perceived. Think about it. When you're late, you walk into a room and immediately the energy shifts. Eyes turn to you, there's that awkward apology, maybe a joke to diffuse the tension. You've disrupted something. For the early arriver, that moment of disruption is almost unbearable. They don't want to be the cause of anyone's inconvenience or annoyance. There's often an underlying fear of judgment, a worry that being late will make them seem unreliable, disrespectful, or careless. And for many, that fear is rooted in something called rejection sensitivity, a heightened awareness of and reaction to the possibility of being rejected or negatively evaluated by others. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Isn't that just anxiety? And yes, anxiety often plays a role, but it's more nuanced than generalized anxiety. It's anticipatory anxiety, specifically the anxiety about what could go wrong and how it might reflect on them. By arriving early, they eliminate that variable entirely. No risk, no anxiety. It's a preemptive strike against their own nervous system. There's also something beautifully considerate about people who are always early, even if they don't realize it themselves. Being early is, in many ways, an act of respect. It signals to the other person, "Your time matters to me. I value this enough to make sure I'm here when I said I would be." In cultures where punctuality is emphasized, like in Germany or Japan, being on time isn't just polite, it's a reflection of your character. And even in cultures where time is more fluid, the person who's always early is often seen as dependable, trustworthy, someone you can count on. That's not accidental. On some level, they know this. They've learned that being early earns them social capital, and over time, that behavior becomes part of their identity. But let's dig deeper. There's a concept in psychology called time perspective, developed by researcher Tom Zimbardo. It describes how people orient themselves toward the past, present, or future. People who are always early tend to have what's called a future-oriented time perspective. They're constantly thinking ahead, planning, anticipating. Their minds live a few steps into the future, always asking, "What's next? What could go wrong? How do I prepare?" This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Future-oriented people tend to be successful, goal-driven, and responsible. But it also means they're rarely fully present in the moment. They're always a little bit ahead of where they actually are. And here's the twist. That future orientation can sometimes come from a place of past experience. Maybe they were late once and it caused a significant problem, a missed opportunity, a scolding from a boss or parent, an embarrassing moment they've never forgotten. That single event can create a lasting imprint, a kind of emotional scar that says never again. From that point on, being early becomes a shield, a way to protect themselves from ever feeling that way again. There's also a fascinating relationship between early arrival and perfectionism. Not the toxic, never good enough kind of perfectionism, but a quieter version, a desire for things to go smoothly, for life to unfold as planned. When you're early, you create space for things to be perfect. You can choose your seat, settle in, take a breath. There's no rushing, no scrambling. Everything feels right. And for someone who craves that sense of order, that feeling is worth the extra 20 minutes of waiting. So, what does all this mean for you, whether you're the early bird or the one who's perpetually 5 minutes behind? If you're always early, recognize that while your habit comes from a place of care, control, and consideration, it's okay to relax a little. Not everything needs a buffer. Sometimes arriving right on time is enough. And if you're the one who's always late, maybe this gives you a little insight into why your early friend seems so stressed when you're running behind. It's not about the clock, it's about the meaning they've attached to it. At the end of the day, the people who always arrive early aren't just punctual, they're navigating a world that feels unpredictable by creating small pockets of certainty. They're managing anxiety, protecting their self-image, and showing respect, all in one seemingly simple act. So next time you see someone sitting alone in a waiting room 15 minutes before anyone else, don't just think they're early. Think about the invisible forces that got them there.